"You've made enemies," Lieutenant Sarah Chen said, reviewing security footage on her tablet. She was the station's head of protective services and the only person who seemed to find his situation more fascinating than catastrophic. 3 Viren males, all from rival family lines. They entered through a cargo bay using forged credentials. Daniel paced the small space, his mind racing. He'd spent every available hour researching the consort's oath, and what he'd learned made everything worse. The tradition originated in Viren warrior culture, a way for soldiers to claim partnership with those they respected on the battlefield. It wasn't about romance. It was about recognizing strength and offering protection in return for alliance. Modern Viren considered it archaic. The fact that he'd triggered it accidentally, with honest words instead of calculated courtship, made him either incredibly foolish or dangerously sincere. In Viren politics, sincerity was a liability. If Shanice accepts, Chen continued, you gain access to her family's intelligence network. That's not just political influence. That's leverage over military contracts, trade routes, information pipelines. People have started wars for less. And if she refuses, human-Viren relations take a significant hit. You're labeled as someone who overstepped cultural boundaries, and we probably lose the trade agreement we've been negotiating for 6 months. Chen looked up from her tablet, no pressure. Daniel sank onto the bench, exhaustion finally catching up with him. I just thought she was beautiful. I didn't mean for anyone to hear. Sometimes, Chen said quietly, the most dangerous things we do are the honest ones. His communicator chimed, a message routed through multiple encryption layers. Daniel's hands shook slightly as he opened it. Observation deck. Midnight come alone, S. Chen read over his shoulder and immediately shook her head. Absolutely not. That's either an assassination setup or my only chance to actually talk to her. Daniel stood, decision made. I caused this mess. I need to face it. You'll be unprotected. I was unprotected when I complimented her backside in front of her entire delegation. How much worse can it get? Chen didn't answer, which was answer enough. At midnight, Daniel stood in the observation deck, watching stars stream past the viewport. He heard Shanice before he saw her, the whisper of armor plating, the controlled breathing of someone trained for combat. She stood with her back to him, silhouetted against the galaxy. You came, she said without turning. You asked. Daniel kept his distance, uncertain of protocol. I owe you an apology. For what? Speaking truth. Now she turned, and in the starlight her features were softer, less guarded. Do you know how many males have tried to invoke the oath with me? Dozens. All calculated, all strategic. Alliances to be gained, power to be seized. She took a step closer. You were the first who didn't even know what you were doing, the first who just saw me. Daniel's throat tightened. I saw someone extraordinary. My family expects me to refuse. To bond with General Thax and secure military support for our sector. Her voice was steady, but something flickered in her eyes. Accepting would disrupt years of careful planning. Then refuse, Daniel said, meaning it. I won't let my mistake trap you. Shani studied him for a long moment. Then, quietly, did you mean what you said? Yes, the honesty came easily now. I think you're magnificent, but I understand if this is impossible. The silence stretched between them like a physical thing. Finally, Shani spoke in formal Viren, words Daniel's implant translated. I accept the consort's oath, witnessed by stars and spoken in truth. Then switching to human standard, I choose this, not for politics, because someone finally saw me without fear. Chapter 4. The observation deck's emergency lights flickered on, bathing everything in soft blue illumination. Somewhere in the station's administrative center, Commander Hayes was probably receiving notification of Shanice's decision and experiencing what Daniel imagined was a very specific kind of bureaucratic cardiac event. But here, in this moment, none of that seemed to matter. You understand what this means, Shani said, and it wasn't quite a question. She remained at the viewport, her reflection ghosting over distant stars. The complications you've just inherited. Daniel laughed, a slightly unhinged sound born of exhaustion and relief and absolute terror. I accidentally proposed marriage to a foreign intelligence operative in front of the entire diplomatic corps. I think I've made peace with complications. Not marriage, partnership. She turned to face him fully now, and Daniel saw past the warrior's mask to something vulnerable beneath. The consort's oath is older than your species' space travel. It binds two people as equals, each offering what the other lacks: protection and insight, strength and strategy. I'm a cultural liaison who can barely keep his thoughts to himself. What could I possibly offer you? Shanice's ears tilted forward, amusement his database supplied. Honesty. Do you know how rare that is in my world? Every word is weighed, every gesture calculated. When you spoke, you weren't trying to manipulate or position yourself. You just reacted. She moved closer, and Daniel forced himself not to step back. I've spent my entire life being a weapon, a tool, a strategic asset. You looked at me and saw a person worth admiring. You are worth admiring. The words came out quieter than he intended. Though maybe next time I'll keep that observation to myself until I've checked my mic status. She almost smiled, almost. My family will test you. General Thax will consider you an obstacle to be removed, and the political fallout will be. She paused, searching for the right word, extensive. Is this the part where you tell me I can still back out? No, her voice was firm. I've accepted the oath. In my culture, that decision is final. I'm telling you that the path forward will be difficult, and I need to know if you're willing to walk it. Daniel thought about his comfortable, boring life before this moment. Filing reports, managing cultural misunderstandings, drinking too much station coffee, and complaining about the recycled air. Safe, predictable, utterly forgettable. Then he thought about the woman standing before him, who'd chosen to upend her entire political trajectory because someone had finally seen her as more than a chess piece, who'd risked everything on the possibility that honesty might be worth more than strategy. I'm in, he said, though I should probably apologize in advance for all the additional diplomatic incidents I'm likely to cause. I'm counting on it. This time she did smile, a genuine expression that transformed her features. My people have grown too comfortable with their protocols and traditions. Perhaps what we need is someone who doesn't know the rules well enough to follow them properly. Daniel's communicator chimed. Multiple messages flooding in. Hayes demanding an immediate briefing. The human diplomatic corps requesting emergency consultations. What appeared to be 3 separate death threats from Valthern males whose family names he didn't recognize. It's starting already, Shanice observed, reading the notifications over his shoulder. Any advice for surviving your family's scrutiny? Be yourself. It's what made me accept the oath. She reached out and after a moment's hesitation took his hand. Her skin was warmer than he expected, her grip strong but not crushing. Also, learn to duck. General Thax has excellent aim. They stood together in the observation deck, as station lights slowly brightened around them, simulating dawn in a place where day and night were artificial constructs. Outside the viewport, the galaxy turned with infinite patience, indifferent to the small dramas of the beings within it. Somewhere in the station, Commander Hayes was probably writing his resignation letter. The Valthern diplomatic delegation was likely debating whether this development helped or hindered their negotiations. And 3 rival assassins were presumably recalculating their odds now that their target had formal protection from one of the collective's most dangerous operatives. But here, in this moment, Daniel Cross held hands with a woman he'd accidentally proposed to and felt something he hadn't experienced in years. The electric anticipation of a future he couldn't predict. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. It was, he thought with the kind of delirious optimism that only comes from severe sleep deprivation and life-altering decisions, going to be absolutely magnificent. The conference room erupted into controlled chaos. 3 human diplomats started talking simultaneously, while their Virin counterparts murmured among themselves, with expressions ranging from approval to something that might have been amusement. Daniel stood frozen, his brain struggling to process what had just happened through the fog of sleep deprivation and rising panic. Commander Hayes grabbed his arm with enough force to leave bruises. "What did you just do?" "I honestly have no idea," Daniel managed, which was technically true. His cultural database was screaming warnings, but the information scrolled too fast to parse properly. Ambassador Kyril raised one elegant hand, and silence fell like a guillotine blade. "It seems," she said in perfect human standard, her tone carefully neutral, "that Liaison Cross has invoked an ancient tradition, perhaps unintentionally." "Explain." Hayes made it sound like an order, which Daniel could have told him was a mistake. Virin didn't respond well to commands from outsiders. Kyril's ears tilted forward slightly. Irritation, Daniel's brain supplied helpfully. The consort's oath. When a male publicly declares admiration for a female warrior's form in the traditional phrasing, witnessed by no fewer than 3 members of the community, it constitutes a binding declaration of intent. Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. "I didn't use any traditional phrasing. I thought my mic was muted." The words "architecturally magnificent" translate to our language as "worthy of claiming," one of the VRIN protocol officers said, consulting a datapad. "In conjunction with the obvious subject and public setting, the oath's conditions are satisfied." This couldn't be happening. This was the kind of catastrophic diplomatic failure that ended careers, possibly ended entire trade agreements. Daniel looked at Shanice, who had remained utterly still throughout the exchange, her expression carved from stone. "I need to retract it," Daniel said quickly. "I apologize. It was completely inappropriate." "Retraction is not possible." Kyril's voice was firm. "The oath, once spoken and witnessed, can only be honored or denied by the female in question. No other party may nullify it." Hayes pulled Daniel aside, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "You need to fix this. 3 months of negotiations, and you just propositioned their intelligence officer in front of everyone." "I didn't proposition anyone. I was making an observation about." Daniel stopped, realizing that explaining exactly what part of Shanice's anatomy he'd been admiring would not improve the situation. The VRIN protocol master, an elderly female whose ears bore the silver rings of high rank, stepped forward. "According to our law, Operative Shanice has 3 solar cycles to render judgment. If she accepts the oath, Liaison Cross gains formal consort status within her family line. If she refuses, it is considered a statement that he is unworthy of such honor." "And if she refuses?" Hayes asked. The protocol master's expression suggested she was explaining basic mathematics to a slow child. "It would be interpreted as profound insult. The human who dared speak the oath deemed insufficient. Your people's judgment called into question." Daniel tried to approach Shanice directly, but 2 of her security detail moved to intercept. She stood perfectly still, and when she finally spoke, her voice was quiet enough that only those nearest could hear. "I require time to consider," she said in human standard, her accent precise. Then, without looking at Daniel, she turned